cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What up, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back. This one is for all my old school basketball fans out there. I really want to know what you guys got to say. I really want your opinion on this one. You know, I hear a whole lot of hot takes, but one thing I love are hot takes that actually have some merit to them, that are actually pretty sound, and really raise the need for this discussion. I was like, let's actually talk about this. So, subscriber/viewer Glenn Sterling 1151 recently said in one of my other Larry Bird videos, quote, "Greatest NBA rivalry of all time was not Magic versus Larry. It was Russell versus Chamberlain. And it's not even close. Russ and Wilt met a dozen or more times in the regular season every year. Bird and Magic only twice every regular season. Both duos usually met in the playoffs, but the real difference was Wilt and Russ covered each other for 48 minutes, while Bird and Magic only covered each other during an occasional switch. I was a teenager in the 1960s, and trust me, those games were intense." Glenn Sterling, I appreciate you. I'm surprised I haven't heard that take more often, at least in the comment section of the videos, because it actually made me think. It was like, you know, maybe it's worth talking about. It's not invalid. It's a good point, and I think it's a fun conversation. So, going back doing some research on some of the matchup situations and things like that. Wilt Chamberlain, who played from 1959 to 1973, versus Bill Russell, who played from 1956 to 1969, a little bit earlier, therefore ended his career earlier, but a decent amount of overlap, okay? During that tenure, Wilt Chamberlain has 2 championships, and Bill Russell, as we all know, have 11, okay? Between the two, they have 142 total matchups, 142, with Wilt averaging 28.7 rebounds and 28.7 points. Should have said that the other way. Either way, 28.7. Bill Russell averaging 14.5 points and 23.7 rebounds. Right now, the reason why they played so much back then is because, let's face it, there weren't as many teams in the NBA back then. There was 8 or so teams, something like that, 8, 9, 10, I think 8, for at least a stretch of that. Let's say 8 teams in the NBA. So quite naturally, even if you're in separate conferences, you're going to be playing the same teams over and over and over and over again. All right. So in the finals against each other, on a game-per-game basis, not series, in the finals, Bill Russell has a 8-4 advantage against Wilt Chamberlain. All right. With the only 2 occurrences in the finals happening in 1964 with the Warriors and 1969 with the Lakers versus the Boston Celtics. All right, now let's look at Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird. Magic Johnson played from 1979 to 1971 with another appearance in 1996 and has garnered 5 championships in his time, versus Larry Bird, who played from 1979 through 1992 and has 3 championships to his name. All right. Head to head, Magic Johnson has averaged 20.1 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 12.5 assists versus Bird. Larry averaged 23.5 rebounds, 23.5 points, 11 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. All right. They faced each other a total of 37 times, 18 regular season and 19 playoffs. Magic Johnson has a 22-15 record against Bird, including a 11-8 record in the finals. They met 3 times in the finals, with Magic boasting a 2-1 winning record against Larry Bird. Like I said earlier, Wilt and Bill, during their time, only 8 teams in the league. During Magic and Larry's time, you're looking at 22, 23 teams at the time. So obviously, now you're not playing the same teams over again. And now with more expansion and more teams in each conference, you're playing the team in your conference more times than you're playing the teams in the opposite conference. So it's really nothing they could do about not seeing each other more. But, I mean, the facts are the facts. Because of that limiting factor, they're not going to see each other as many times as Wilt and Bill saw each other. Even if they played in the same conference, they weren't going to see each other the same amount of times as Wilt and Bill, just on the sheer fact that there wasn't as many teams to fill the 82 game requirement, right, on the NBA season. Now, he brings up a good point. Being that Wilt and Bill played the same position and were both prolific centers at the time, yeah, they were each other's matchup. They were each other's assignment, head to head. When you look at Magic versus Larry, though they were similar in size, Magic usually played the point. He was the point guard. He was the de facto point guard. Bird usually played that small forward and sometimes power forward position, though on offense he could do some point guard responsibilities and duties, especially from top of the key, but he could pass from anywhere on the court. He didn't have to bring the ball up all the time. But we know the wizard that Larry Bird was passing the ball. But still, with that being said, those similar in size and those sometimes Bird might get into some point guard assignments, Michael Cooper was the primary assignment. It was Michael Cooper's job to guard Larry Bird. And only did Magic guard Bird, or either vice versa, really did they guard each other, was sporadically. They usually weren't each other's assignments, especially from the position of Magic Johnson guarding Larry Bird. Whenever Cooper wasn't on Bird, Bird's eyes was like, if he saw Magic on him, like, oh, no Cooper? Come get these buckets. Yeah. So they weren't each other's primary assignment on a regular basis. That was not the case. And though I wasn't around to watch, all of these games, I've seen enough footage and read enough and did enough research to find that that's been consistently the story. And definitely going to take the subscriber's word for it. He grew up in that time. So that's a valid point. It is a valid point. So if you look at it from the perspective of quantity, how many times did they face each other? Yes, Larry and Magic aren't going to win that. It's not even something they could have controlled. It's just the era that presented itself, and playing inside that era, this is how many times you are scheduled to play this person. There's nothing you can do about that. And then when you look at the Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell dynamic, you have, Wilt coming into the league in 59. Bill had already been there for 3 years. Bill is already established as one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league, winning championships, right? The best defensive player in the league. And then you have Wilt coming in, a new guy on the block, complete opposite of Bill. Like what Bill could do defensively, Wilt Chamberlain was the equivalent offensively, just overwhelmingly unstoppable and great. And, you got Wilt out here putting up all these godly numbers, and still has over 70 records to this day that most of them will never be broken, putting up crazy stats, points, rebounds, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, whatever the case may be, 20, 30, 40 rebounds, 50 rebounds, I don't even know. Blocks weren't even counted back then, but both of these guys were probably getting anywhere between 5 to 15 blocks a game any given day. They do have some records of that, but they're unofficial records. Basically, and you got Wilt Chamberlain doing all this stuff, but not winning championships, especially at the rate Bill Russell was. So you had this dynamic of Wilt, like the solo act guy, getting all this, publicity, if you will, and racking up all the points, racking up all the stats. Oh, he's unstoppable, it's that. Versus Bill's very contrasting style, which is much more team-centric. I'm not saying Wilt was all the time just some type of ball hog. A lot of times, what I've read and learned, too, is that Wilt did things to cover his ass, so you couldn't pin the blame on him. But Wilt also did what the coaches wanted him to do, and always did what the coaches asked him to do at the same time. I don't think a lot of people talk about that, but I've heard other people say that, and Wilt say that. Okay? But Bill Russell was definitely more team-centric and anchored the team on the defensive end. And because he didn't have the abilities that Wilt Chamberlain had offensively, he didn't have to he wasn't asked to do the things Wilt Chamberlain was asked to do because, quite frankly, he couldn't do the things Wilt Chamberlain could do on the offensive end. But he was amazing defensively and was adequate enough on the offensive end, which allowed other people to do their things offensively. But, Bill would single-handedly start offense just by his shot blocking and outlet passing alone. Anyway, but when you look at the Larry Bird and Magic dynamic, and like I said, obviously they're not going to be able to play each other as much. But what makes that rivalry so special, and why a lot of people do say this is the greatest rivalry in sports, is because how they came in, right? The college rivalry they started, right? ISU versus Michigan State, still the most watched basketball game, that NCAA championship game. Larry Bird putting ISU on the mat, having that amazing record, getting to the championship game. Michigan State didn't have as good of a record. They had some ups and downs in that season, but they made it. And at the end of the day, proved they were the better team when the dust settled. And the rivalry started there. There was so much hype going into that championship game. So much talk about Bird and what he was doing. So much talk about Magic and what he was doing. Another thing was that these two guys, similar how I said Wilt and Bill's games contrast each other in a way. I wouldn't say Bird and Magic had a very different game, but they both could pass the ball very well. They both were very team oriented. Magic wasn't quite as good as the scorer Larry was, just as a pure scorer and pure shooter. He wasn't as good as Larry, and Larry was better defensively. But there wasn't as much contrast in their playing styles as the contrast as compared to the contrast that Wilt and Bill had, but their personalities were yin and yang, oil and water, do not mix, aren't the same. I guess do not mix isn't the right thing to say, but very, very contrasting personalities and how they carried themselves and their character, right? Larry was, the white kid from French Lick country, really well reserved, had a great sense of humor, but generally kept to himself, no nonsense kind of guy, had a really good sense of humor, but usually was serious a lot of the time. No nonsense type of guy, especially when it mattered. Magic Johnson, the complete opposite. Larry didn't want publicity. Larry didn't want cameras in his face. Larry didn't want attention. He didn't want any of that. He didn't care what anybody thought of him. He didn't need anybody's approval. He didn't need love from anybody. He could care less what you thought about him. Magic Johnson, the complete opposite. He loved the attention. He loved the spotlight. He wanted to be in front of the camera smiling. He wanted to be talking. He thrived off being loved by everyone and wanted everybody to like him, and he wanted to like everybody else. The complete opposite. So that was an interesting dynamic as well. And not to say that Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain didn't have contrasting personalities and character. In fact, they were very opposite as well. And also, when you think about it, Bill Russell probably more closely resembles Larry, has a lot of similarities to Larry in some ways, as does Wilt Chamberlain has some similarities to Magic Johnson. Though Bill's not exactly like Larry and Wilt's not exactly like Magic, I would say Larry and Bill definitely sway one direction while Wilt and Magic sway the other direction. I think there are some similarities there. But one thing that, Larry and Magic had with their contrasting personalities is them sowing the seeds of rivalry at the collegiate level, and then watching them flourish and blossom at the NBA level. And then Magic Johnson was even more of a media man than Wilt Chamberlain ever was. He was Showtime. He was literally the face of the league. Like, he wanted that. He accepted it. And he was well liked amongst everybody, where Wilt Chamberlain was much more polarizing from that perspective. And you take that into the hype they brought to NCAA basketball, and then they took that hype, brought it into the league, where at the time Julius Erving was basically keeping the NBA on life support. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson breathed fresh life into the National Basketball Association. Leaving the NCAA, they brought it more fame. They brought more attention to NCAA basketball while leaving, and then bringing that energy into the NBA and bringing all that attention and bringing more people into the game of basketball and getting people excited again on what was on the horizon. Because now you got Magic and Bird. We just saw what that NCAA lifestyle was like. Now we're going to get that on the biggest stage at the pro level on historic franchises with the Lakers and the Boston Celtics. They did a lot for the NBA, and still very contrasting personalities. And though eventually they would build a bond and a friendship that will last the test of time, an unbreakable bond, they are brothers after they really got to know each other during that commercial shoot in French Lick. But even through their friendship, and Wilt and Bill had a friendship too, that should not be understated. Even through their friendship, they were still super competitive with each other. But it was always all love. And then, with the Wilt and Bill thing, it was usually the Celtics dominating that era while Bill played. While as opposed to that 80s era, right? And even Magic went to the finals in 91. Well, 1990-91. 91 finals. It was both Larry and Magic more or less dominating their prospective conferences and showing face in the NBA finals. And during their stretch, during their career, Magic Johnson has 9 finals appearances. He was a representative in the NBA finals 9 times. Larry Bird 5 times. So those two guys, though they weren't able to meet each other in the regular season so much, come playoff time, there's a high probability they would meet each other in the finals. But I'll tell you this too, that you got another thing to consider is that given the fact that Wilt and Bill met each other so many times, it doesn't. How do I say this? Let me try from this angle. Being that Magic and Bird didn't see each other as often, it made the moments that they did play each other that much more savory, that much more hype, because you knew you were only going to get this 2 times during the regular seasons. That's it. One time in the Forum and 1 time in the Garden. And you're not going to see these two play each other for another year unless they meet up in the finals. And then you're getting the best out of 7. So you have to savor it. These times they meet up, there's much more hype. There's much more at stake. There's much more that comes with bragging rights, because there's going to be a very limited amount of times that we're going to go see these guys play against each other and carry their respective teams. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing from the Wilt perspective, from the Wilt Bill perspective, or the Magic and Larry perspective. But it is what it is, product of the era. But that's how I felt. I'm a lifelong Laker fan, so whenever I got to see Kobe go up against a McGrady or a Iverson or a Carter or a LeBron, knowing that these other guys were in the Eastern Conference, I'm circling this on a calendar because I know I might only get this twice a year if they don't meet in the finals. And these are two of the best players in the league. And I want to see them go head to head. And it's a pleasure for the people that got to see Wilt and Bill go head to head a lot. That's a treat. But you got to imagine how much people hold on to in the future eras, hold on to those matchups because they were few and far between. I think that adds to the lore of it. I think it kind of does. So depending on which way you look at it. And really, Wilt wasn't even going to see Bill in the finals while he was with the 76ers. because he was with the 76ers, right? So it wasn't until the San Francisco move and the Lakers move would he have a chance to see Bill Russell in the finals. But like I said, I think that is a valid point. It is. It really is. Because when Wilt and Bill were playing with each other, they were the two heads of the league. Well, two of the heads of the league. There were some other faces around the NBA at that time. I'm not going to say that, but they were two of the most prolific players, especially with Wilt being extremely polarizing. And they were definitely two of the faces of the NBA. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. So they were carrying the league as well, especially Bill and the Celtics, given the dynasty that they put together. Anywho, you guys can talk much more intelligently about this than I can. Those of you that lived through this era, those of you that got to watch basketball being played during this time, you guys can speak more about this than I can. You guys know the details that I could never have. You guys have some of the context that I could never have. And understanding, as much as I try to understand, I think I understand, I will never have the understanding that you have being lived through that time. And I appreciate that. That's why I look to you guys for your comments and your opinions and your enlightenment. So tell me what you think about this this Wilt versus Bill rivalry as compared to the Magic versus Bird rivalry. I would love to hear your opinion. I would love to hear your take. Call me out if I said some nonsense. If I said something wrong, please call me out on it. Appreciate you when you guys do that. And in general, let me know what you think. All right? Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified. I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.